What's up, you guys? Welcome to Critique the Critics, the show where we take a professional review from a professional critic, even though it's not gonna sound like it, and we generally pick it apart and make fun of it and knock it down like a small child knocking down his sister's sandcastle. And today we're talking about the movie Us, the second from Jordan Peele. I'm very excited to see what this reviewer is going to say. But before we get started, if it's your first time here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the little bell right next to it, and you can make sure that you get notified every single time we have a new video. Now let's take a look at this review of the movie Us. It's not outlandish to suggest that Jordan Peele's audacious 2017 horror satire, Get Out, helped galvanize a resurgence of the horror genre in 2018. Sure it is. It's actually kind of outlandish to say that. I guess it helped galvanize it. Horror never really went away. If a horror movie comes out, people go. It's not even the only horror movie that came out that year that everyone was talking about. So I guess helped is the right word, but it seems like you're giving a little more credence than it deserved. It was a really good movie, don't get me wrong, but come on. It's ironic that Peele's sophomore effort, Us, which follows a family confronting their evil doppelgängers, falls into many of the same repetitive traps that make standard horror films such a bore. Unless you like horror films. And then these things that happen in these movies are things that we all love. I'm getting really tired of reading reviews from critics who give crap to the things that we like. It's like going to your favorite dive bar, or your favorite restaurant, or wearing your favorite Speedos. We all have them. Don't lie, you have a favorite pair of Speedos. Mine are pink and have a dragon f***ing a car on them. This is gonna be a weird video. Alright. Us is equally ambitious thematically to Peele's breakout debut, but lacks the same artistic focus and emotional resonance. Peele mysteriously abandons the rich social subtext he works so hard to establish in the film's opening moments in favor of a formulaic midsection that bloats the film to a staggering 2 hours. There's no escaping that Us is deeply flawed, rarely scary, and at times deadly dull. Deadly dull. I'm gonna take by you saying it doesn't have the same social subtext as Get Out as you meaning I didn't get this movie. Because if you get it, you realize that it has a lot of subtext and is actually incredibly deep. And some would argue brilliant. I don't really care if you think it's brilliant or even like it, but you do have to understand that there's like a lot of things going on under the surface of this movie. And whether or not you like it isn't in question here. It's if you just got it at all. To think that it's not there is just, you know, wrong. I don't even know how to make a joke out of that. While Winston Duke is undeniably funny, Gabe as a character is so at odds with his ultra-serious surroundings that he appears completely out of place. I mean, isn't that kind of the point? I mean, everybody's kind of out of place. This is a crazy scenario. The only way to actually explain how wrong you are in this situation is to give things away. But the people who aren't out of place, there's reasons. And the people who are out of place, there are reasons. And if you watch it maybe a second time, you should be able to catch that. And if you can't, then I feel like you just move on to something else where everything's either like super obvious or everything is so not obvious that you can just make it whatever the heck you want it to be. Just watch a really low budget indie film where everybody gets to discuss what it means to them, and so you're never wrong. And that might be the perfect film for you to watch and actually critique. Just saying. Here, the humor seems calculated and detached, as though Gabe exists only to provide ironic commentary on the carnage. He's not the only one providing ironic commentary in general. Everyone's reacting as they would based on their characters. In fact, that's probably why we had character development in the beginning of the movie, so we can have an understanding of their actions and how they react to things and the things that they say. It's kind of crazy to do that, and I understand that they made a giant mistake showing us who these characters were ahead of time, but also, I'm being incredibly sarcastic. This is frustrating already. Oh yeah. I'm gonna end up really mad by the end of this review. This is so stupid. This highlights a basic tonal inconsistency that plagues Us, where the constant quips distract from the skin-crawling visuals, often resulting in unintentional laughter. I feel like you've never seen a horror movie, or even a thriller for that matter. There's often a lot of times humor put in to help break the creepiness, or to help relieve the uncomfortable thing that is going on, or the gore, or the murder, and the horrible things that people watch. Myself being a big fan of horror isn't as easily affected by a lot of that stuff, but we were even commenting that the other people in the theater needed to kind of calm themselves down after certain things happen. That's what the humor does. It relieves some of that tension, because the average person isn't like, keep giving me the gore and giving me the blood. It makes it a much more accessible horror film, which is why a lot of people consider 80s the best period of time for horror, and you'll notice that there is a lot of humor and things that go on that relieve that craziness for the average viewer to go see. It's so interesting to school someone whose job is to write about movies. Given the abundance of disturbing imagery, it seems likely that humor was either not Peele's intention or it was woven ineffectively into his script. When the doppelgangers of Adelaide's family first appear, wreathed by fog and shadow as they hold hands while standing in the driveway, it's truly disconcerting. The problem is you're making these two things mutually exclusive. Creepiness, something that's concerning, something that's horrific, some sort of thriller. Like, all of these things aren't mutually exclusive to humor. Both of those things can coincide. So just because you have this image where you're like, ooh, that's concerning, ooh, that creeps me out, doesn't mean you can't also have humor. They are not mutually exclusive. That's not how this works. It's like if you meet someone who's happy and then one day they had a bad day and you're like, no, you're only allowed to be happy. You're Happy Jen. I call you Happy Jen when I'm talking to other people and I'm like, hey, you ever met Happy Jen? Now I don't know what to call you. What, Jen? No. Also, I agree that, you know, now that Jordan Peele has ventured into horror, he just doesn't know how to do comedy anymore. The guy's clearly lost it. You know, you might even argue that he's never been funny to begin with. Look at his track record. Jordan Peele is honestly like if Michael Jordan ended up being good at baseball and golf. At this point in Us, with our heroes staring the tethered square in the eye, we feel the weight of Peele's churning social subtext. Truly, I thought there was no subtext. We found it. Truly, when a society subjugates and marginalizes huge swaths of its population, it is doomed to devour itself from within. The interconnectedness of civilization erodes, and the mighty devolve into barbarians in order to protect their fragile artifice. It's a theme that weaves perfectly with Peele's nifty doppelganger premise, promising plenty of biting insight mixed with bloody thrills. This is the part where he gets it. Now let's move on to the part where he doesn't get it. Although it started with him not getting it, and then getting it, and then not getting it. I don't get it. So why does Peele abandon this ingenious approach in favor of repetitive chase and escape horror tropes? Because we came to see a horror movie with chasing and killing and blood. He's using a vehicle to have subtext. That's great. That's a good thing. It's like you're jumping around like a f***ing maniac in a mosh pit listening to Foo Fighters, but then if you sit down and actually read the lyrics, you're like, man, this guy was actually saying some stuff. That's literally what's going on. If one didn't know better, they might assume studio executives had demanded rewrites of Peele's script to make Us a more conventional horror film. Probably not. He's probably just good at what he's doing and had a lot of intention with what he was doing. I'm gonna go off on a limb and say that he made the movie he wanted to. Because if he didn't, that would be really weird after the success of Get Out. You don't have the success of Get Out and then have some guy being like, no! You have him going, I'm gonna do whatever the f I want. I just made Get Out. Adelaide and her family drive cars, boats, and even an ambulance to evade capture. And it goes on and on and on until the delicate scaffolding created in the film's first 15 minutes collapses. I would say progresses? Starts turning into a building, if we're gonna go with your scaffolding reference. Man, I wish everything in that movie just stayed the same from then on. What are you talking about? It had to go somewhere. Meanwhile, huge chunks of exposition from Adelaide's gurgling twin explain all of the scenes and plot points that were omitted in favor of pointless running around. So you wanted this entire movie to be just like a sit-down chat? Also, all of that stuff did get explained. And again, in order for me to actually explain that explanation, I would be spoiling this movie, and that is not the purpose of this video. And it also shouldn't be the purpose of your review. So we're not gonna go there. Just, you should know that it's explained why she did that explaining. It's explained why she didn't explain everything immediately. It's explained why the movie went in the direction it did. So, if you didn't like the explanation, if you felt like it might have been a little bit too much explanation, or a little bit too on the nose, that's totally fine. but to say that it didn't happen or it didn't work, that's just kind of inaccurate. There are brief moments of inspired weirdness, a figure lurking in the corner or a darting object skirting our peripheral vision, but scares are in short supply. Any sense of unease is squashed by the predictable rhythm of what's basically the same scene played out over and over again. It really depends on the person. Myself, who sees tons and tons and tons of horror movies, wasn't thoroughly scared through that movie, not even necessarily thoroughly creeped out, highly entertained and highly thrilled during it, but I wouldn't say scared or creeped out. I really liked it though. And this isn't even the point I'm making. I don't care if someone likes this movie, I more care if your review is accurate. But again, the people that were in the theater, a lot of them were very scared. There were people jumping, people screaming, people making comments, grabbing the people next to them, and that's the average viewer and the people that are loving his movies. So just because you didn't have the same kind of visceral reaction everybody else did, doesn't mean that that reaction won't exist. It just means that you're probably a guy who watches every frickin' movie that comes out and you've been so desensitized that you couldn't get an erection if you wanted to. Like a movie boner? I don't know why. I don't know where I was going with that. Movie boner.
A moaner.
Calling us a disappointment is an oversimplification. Well, calling your review a disappointment is an oversimplification. Yeah, take that. It's more of an incomplete thought, an ambitious draft with countless ideas and story threads that fail to tie together because of a flawed structure. Indeed, the more you think about Us, the more it unravels. Peele's stated intention was to produce a more straight-ahead horror film than Get Out. Unfortunately, he succeeded. It's really funny because I feel like the more you think about Us, the more you have to think about Us. There's a lot of things to think about here. If you're considering this just a straight-ahead, straightforward horror movie, then you're missing a lot of what's going on here. And again, it's a straight ahead horror movie, or thriller if you will, with a whole bunch of stuff underneath. And what it does is it makes it so that if someone just wanted a horror movie, they're fine. If someone wanted something deep, they get that too. And then if someone wants both, they get that. And then if someone wouldn't normally think about the ideas that he's presented, there's always a person who won't necessarily think about these things, but because it's enveloped in this horror movie or this normal thriller movie like he has, they start thinking about something they wouldn't have otherwise thought about. It's actually a technique that's used in, you know, art. It's really not that strange. And it's also really odd to have someone whose job it is to critique art and not be able to understand that that in itself is a technique. And really well used. Well, thank you so much guys for watching. What did you think of this review? For me, it was painful to even read. It just completely missed everything that was going on, and you could tell the frustration in my face. It was obvious. So put in the comments what you thought of the review. Put in the comments what you thought of the movie Us. If it's your first time here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Also, we do record this live on Twitch every time we record these shows. So if you want to check that out and hang out with us live, make sure you check out the description for the link to our Twitch page. And until we see you guys next time, geek out and game on.